Hello and welcome to another fun experimental art session. Today we're going to try carving out of fruit. I'm new to this too. The only fruit carving I've done to date is a series of carved pumpkins that I did last Halloween. Link in the corner if you're interested to see those. But right now it's spring, we haven't got pumpkins, so we're going to use other fruits. If you've ever been to exotic restaurants or on exotic foreign holidays, you may have seen examples of fruit carving art from Thailand, China, Japan. Many of these designs are incredibly intricate, often geometric, but carving of this sort requires precision tools, such as scalpels and very sharp cutting knives, plus a lot of patience and years of practice. We are going to use very basic cutlery, so the results will be accordingly simplified. There are many fruits that can be used in this art form. The most popular ones include watermelons, apples, strawberries, pineapples, and cantaloupes. Many believe that fruit carving originated in China during the Tang dynasty, well over 1,000 years ago. Fruit carving is still used in cultural and traditional ceremonies, and also for welcoming guests to your home. It's probably fairly obvious which types of fruit are going to be useful for carving out of and which aren't. Right now, during lockdown, you probably won't be able to get hold of things like watermelons. So I'm going to stick to some very basic types of fruit that you will find in your local supermarket or corner shop. Specifically, I'm going to suggest using ones that are firm textured and, if possible, have a strong contrasting colour between their flesh and their skin. A word about tools. If you're planning to eat your carved fruit creations, then please make sure your tools are clean and food safe. The best types of carving implements by far are things like lino cutting tools and scalpels, which I used on my pumpkins. But in the spirit of lockdown, I'm assuming you don't have access to any of those, so I'm going to stick to tools that you'll probably have at home in your kitchen cupboard or drawer. It's worth having a rummage, seeing what utensils you might find to add interesting textures or mark making. Most importantly, I want you to have fun and experiment freely, but please be safety conscious, especially with anything that has a blade. Obviously, you'll want a cutting board or cutting mat of some sort to protect your work area. Also, fruit gets sticky due to its sugar content, so you may need to clean up later on. You might want to begin by thinking about your fruit rather like a sculptor looks at a block of stone, thinking about what it contains, what it reminds you of. You might be inspired by the colour. Right, I'm going to start by using a fork to begin to just cut into this. I'm roughly speaking outlining the bits that I want to leave in. In terms of your design, think about the bits of the green that we want to leave intact from top to bottom and where we want to take it out and reveal the lighter coloured flesh inside. At some point, I'm going to take a knife. Now, this is where you want to be really careful not to injure yourself. So always cut away from yourself. Bearing in mind that the more we cut away, the more fragile the rest of the apple is going to become. So really think about leaving enough of it intact. If you feel like snacking on the bits as you go, then please do. Notice the way I've got my fingers positioned so that even if I slip with this knife, it's only going to go so far into the apple and not out the other side. All I'm doing is sort of cutting out, very roughly speaking, maybe a fir tree or something like that. But it could equally be a feather or leaf or something like that. You want to begin to think about pattern, texture, that sort of thing. Apple skin can be quite waxy and slippery, so every time you place your knife over the edge of the skin, you want to be very careful not to slip. The more you're cutting out of your fruit, the more fragile the whole thing is going to become. You'll also notice, especially if you're using an apple, that it's going to start browning, obviously. You can use lemon juice and so on to retard that process, but I'm just going to press on for now. Let's see what happens with a spoon, what we can do with that. So obviously it's going to be a curved line, whatever you do. Let's see. Yeah, that works quite well. You can, of course, take it right round and make a full circle if you meet the other side, sort of thing. That's going to be quite useful. A lot of this is purely down to experimenting and having fun and just seeing what happens. Experimenting is really useful in any art context for getting a feel for your tools and techniques, and it can often set you thinking of things that you might create. If you're careful, you might be able to just slightly lift things like petals to make them slightly more three-dimensional without letting them fall out altogether. The skin, being quite firm, tends to hold things in place even when the flesh is actually broken underneath it. So you can sort of get away with a lot that you wouldn't otherwise.